An enormous portion of young adults in America are turning to places like TikTok to get their news, and that's according to a new report by Reuters. Now, that probably won't surprise you, considering how increasingly people have been getting their news online through social media. But if you know anyone under the age of 25, it's likely that they're also getting their news from social media, and this study makes it clear, provides the receipts for that trend. So let's start with what the findings are. They found that 1 in 5 adults under 24 use TikTok as a source for news. The 2023 Reuters Institute Digital News Report said, and that's actually up 5 percentage points from last year. And that's actually consistent with how Americans overall consume their news, okay? So let's pull up this graph. It'll help you visualize what's going on here. So when you look at this graph, you'll notice that the percentage of Americans who get their news from online sources has actually declined from 75% to 72% in 2023. But there's a caveat here. That number also includes news websites like CNN.com, for example. And CNN happens to be one of the triggers for the trend of people moving toward social media and other alternative sources on social media and online. Meanwhile, the number of Americans who get their news from social media significantly skyrocketed from 27% in 2013 to 48% in 2023. And the number of Americans who get their news from television has plummeted from 72% in 2013 to 48% in 2023. Cenk?
Yeah, so now mainstream media will see this news report and go, tisk, tisk, tisk. Look at these kids, they don't know anything about news. They don't even support the status quo. A lot of them are saying things where they say, oh, you should do change or rebel. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Don't you know corporate rule is the way to go? Don't you know kissing the ass of the politicians is the professional thing to do? Oh, we have brought on a beloved politician. And we're not gonna talk about their campaign contributions at all, because those millions of dollars they took are not bribes. Tell us about your ideas, beloved politician. And then people on TikTok are like, yeah, that's not true at all. That guy got bribed by those companies. And he doesn't represent you at all. He doesn't even have any ideas. He just gets paychecks. And then mainstream media goes, tisk, tisk, tisk. Look at these young kids, outrageous. Why won't they support corporate rule? Why won't they tell everyone that the politicians are great? Look at that wonderful moderate Joe Manchin and that wonderful moderate Kristen Sinema. Just standing up for the real Americans who believe in corporate rule. Tisk, tisk, tisk.
They actually say it with that insufferable tone too.
They actually do, in my opinion.
No, they don't. They don't.
I think they do. Okay. I think they do. Okay, and so look, it's important that you be fact-based. So I'm aware of the problems on both sides. So yes, there are online shows and people on TikTok that play fast and loose with the facts, or they don't even really get into the facts. They just tell you their emotions or what they're feeling or what their ideology is, and then they use facts to kind of back up their ideology rather than having the facts and then starting with that proposition and then going forward to what those facts lead to, right, in terms of conclusions. So I'm aware that problems exist in that realm.
A lot of problems exist.
Yeah, a lot of problems. Yeah. There's no question. On the other hand, the people who usually do these studies and then criticize, they just assume that if you're online, you're on TikTok, you don't know anything, and that they look down their nose at you. But what do you know in corporate media? You're constantly telling us that these politicians are honest. That's absurd. Over 90% of Americans don't believe you because they're right. And you constantly tell them they're not taking bribes when we could all see them taking bribes. And you call them campaign contributions, you call them anything you like. They're obvious bribes. I mean, among 100 other absurdities that corporate media tells you while pretending to be objective.
So Cenk, I'm gonna push back a little bit because the thing that frustrates me about your incessant and like kind of broad general attacks toward journalists and media in America is that you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, because all of these influencers that people are getting their news from on TikTok aren't doing original reporting. They're not out on the field gathering the news. They are literally just sharing and reacting to what CNN is reporting, okay? Now hold on, I'm not done. CNN has massive issues, so does the New York Times, Washington Post. We talk about these things incessantly. However, as we also talk about on the show incessantly, sometimes they do excellent reporting. And when we share that with you, we give them credit for that excellent reporting. You throw the baby out with the bathwater, that original reporting, that excellent journalism no longer exists.
Yeah, so I both agree and disagree with you. I agree with you in concept, and I'll add more names. Reuters, AP, in the old days, McClatchy newspapers were terrific. And as much as it pains me, because they do some awful things as well, but New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, they will break original stories, and then we will use that, and we can criticize how they frame those stories, and oftentimes the framing is terrible, but they do actually collect real news and share with it. Now, if you notice, those are almost all print journalists. By the way, also The Guardian, The Intercept, The Lever, good independent outlets who do terrific journalism. And I got no critique of them, okay? Well, if it's deserved, no problem, but generally they're terrific, okay? But the only part I disagree with you, Anna, is CNN. What original reporting? I mean, they barely have any original reporting. They have billions of dollars. They never use it for original reporting, because original reporting would be about the powerful, and it would upset the powerful, and they don't want that. They want the powerful as their advertisers and their guests and the people whose ass they kiss. So, I mean, I'll agree with everything except cable news.
They do some original reporting. In fact, before the reporters from CNN were forced to sit down and watch a 45-minute Hamas terrorist video, they were actually doing some pretty great reporting. I mean, Jake Tapper, we were giving Jake Tapper credit for actually pushing back against some of the narratives coming from the Israeli government and the IDF and the treatment of Palestinians. And a lot of what he was reporting on was based on original reporting that CNN was doing, okay? Now again, then the reporters went to Israel. Israel sat them down and had them watch a 45-minute terrorist video of innocent civilians being tortured, maimed, killed, okay? And that was meant to essentially let them know, hey, these are the bad guys, you shut the hell up about what we're doing to innocent Palestinian civilians. And they listened, their reporting has definitely shifted ever since that happened last week.
But it's shifting back now. So look, guys, let me retract a part of what I'm saying. Good point, Anna. So first off, they have war correspondents, so that's original reporting to some degree. In the past, those war correspondents were used for 100% propaganda, okay? And so they would come in and they say, oh yeah, Iraq, Muslims, terrible, bad guys. That's why 70% of Americans thought that Iraq had attacked us on 9/11, when it's not even remotely true, because the propagandists on cable news and the New York Times lied about it 24/7, okay? So they use their war correspondents for evil in the past. But now, their war correspondents sometimes actually break good stories, so I'll give you that. And sometimes they're doing really good interviews. And we've talked about Jake Tapper, and today Wolf Blitzer doing that. And those are original reporting of a sort, all right? So now, having said that, why did we report Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer doing a good job? Because it was breaking news when somebody on cable news does a halfway decent job of being a journalist. Let's be honest about it. So most of the time they're doing propaganda. So one time when they don't do propaganda, you're like, wow, nailed it, Jake Tapper. Thank you for actually asking a good question and a good follow-up, right? So look, guys, if they all turn around today and they all start doing honest, great journalism, challenging the people in power, I'll turn around on them and go, great, I love CNN, I love MSNBC, right? But right now, them doing a good job or doing original reporting is the exception, not the rule. But for a lot of places like Guardian, Lever, Intercept, it's the rule. And most print is way better than TV. And so that's the nuances of reality. But having facts as your basis should be non-negotiable no matter where you work in media.
So let's get to the various outlets who did original reporting that is now just absolutely decimated. And look, part of the problem is when you look at a news organization, and I make this mistake all the time too, I think Jake makes this mistake almost every day. You'll see the bad reporting and you'll conflate it with everyone who works, every reporter that works at that organization. There are hosts here who have takes on various stories that I vehemently disagree with. And I hate it when I get grouped in as if I also agree with that point of view. No, there are different hosts who have different points of view, who do different work. It's really important to keep that in mind. Now, with that said, according to State of Local News 2022 report from Northwestern University, more than 360 newspapers closed in the US between late 2019 and May 2022, and all but 24 were weekly newspapers serving small to mid-sized communities. Digital outlets like BuzzFeed News and Vice have struggled to stay afloat as well. In fact, BuzzFeed has done away with their news section, I believe.
That's right.
And Vice went bankrupt. I mean, they lied about their numbers to begin with and got all this investment money and apparently squandered it. But nonetheless, let me continue. But this isn't necessarily because Americans are lazy and don't care about original reporting. It might be because they don't trust these outlets overall. Even if they include some original reporting, that's good. So Edward Wasserman, a professor of journalism at UC Berkeley, explained it well. He said this: there is a sense of a self-serving, self-indulgent elite that's running things to benefit themselves. For all its claims about independence and bringing a critical gaze to policy, there are vast areas where the press is in lockstep with the people who own and run the country. And I think he's right about that. That's a point that you make all the time, Cenk, and I think you're right about that. And so when they do that, it ends up destroying the good work that the journalists are doing at these organizations. Okay, the journalists who in some cases, when it comes to war correspondence, they put their lives in danger in order to collect the news and do the original reporting that they do. It just sucks that there's corporate influence in our media and that takes away from their credibility. The American public is not stupid. They are smart and they can see it. And the fact that these organizations never adjusted the way that they do things not only hurts the American people, not only hurts our democracy, which relies on a well-informed public in order to function properly, they're hurting themselves and they don't even realize it. And when they do realize it, it's gonna be too late.
Yeah, so look, we're not like the right wing, so I wanna be super clear. I love journalism. I want good, objective journalism. But objective journalism isn't, hey, the status quo is terrific and anyone who proposes changes are radical. And that politicians who are totally serve their corporate donors are moderate, okay? That's not good journalism, that's terrible journalism, okay? But yes, journalists risk their lives and are, like Reuters had journalists die covering Israel, Gaza, amazing. And we appreciate them. The journalists in Russia and other places like Iran, Saudi Arabia, risk their lives on a daily basis. We love those journalists, and print is way better, as I've said many times. And they didn't just lose their audience because they're reporting things wrong or from a corporate perspective. They also had a problem with their advertising model. So it's both business and how they conducted themselves, to be fair to them. But the last thing I'll say is, Anna, yes, not everyone in those organizations are bad guys, and I don't mean to imply that at all. And I know plenty of people that work at CNN and MSNBC who are very, very good people and good journalists, okay? And in fact, in my book, I defend a lot of those journalists who were fired from those places, okay? But yes, the organizations matter. And the organization overall tells you, go in a corporate direction and call it objective, or do real honest reporting, whether I disagree or agree, right? And on cable news, you're not gonna get that. You're gonna get the corporate position. And that is why they've lost all credibility with young people.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.